Hello YouTube! So this is a video that I've seen a couple of other booktubers doing and I really liked the idea of it. So today I'm going to tell you the top 5 books that I've read so far this year. We're about halfway into the year, and so now's a good time to stop and look at the books that I've read and see what really stood out, and then I'll do another one of these at the end of the year and it'll be great. Alright, so these aren't in any particular order. I just went through my list of books I've read and picked out my favorites. It's funny because I feel like these are the books that I've just been talking about a lot, so you're probably not going to be surprised by any of these, but the first one is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I love this book. It was one of the first books that I read this year. It was one that was on my shelf for a really long time, and then I just decided one day, what the heck am I doing? And I dove in and I loved it. This book was exciting and action-packed, and it really made me think about the future and about what I really would like to see from technology and the internet out of the future, and it was like equal parts exciting and scary thinking about that, but I just loved it. I feel like I still talk about it all the time. It's one of the books that I've tried to convince other people to read the most. I haven't listened to the audiobook, but it's read by Will Wheaton and people seem to be really excited about that, so if I ever do a reread I might try it that way, and I loved it. So this is the first book on my list. Next is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I also read this near the start of the year. This is one that I'd heard a lot of people talking about and I didn't really know much about it. I really appreciated that the info on the back was basically just the circus arrives without warning. No announcements precede it. It is simply there when yesterday it was not. That's kind of all you know going in, and this book was just beautifully written. The descriptions were like luscious. There were luscious descriptions in this book. I want to just like bathe in the beauty of the language of this book. This book was just so enjoyable in every sense. I loved everything about it. The story, the characters, the setting, of course, and just the way that this author utilizes language is just beautiful. So definitely read this book if you have a chance. I feel like I refer to this book and try to get people to read this book all the time as well. Next up for me was The Winner's Crime by Marie Rutkowski. This is the second book in the Winner's trilogy after The Winner's Curse. I had very much been looking forward to this book because The Winner's Curse was one of those delightful surprises that I did not expect at all. I read it in December for Booktubeathon, actually, for Christmas Booktubeathon. I expected a good book. I didn't expect anything great, and then it just surprised the heck out of me by being wonderful, and I read it in one day, in one sitting. And so when this came out, I had to run and get it on the very first day. And this book, I didn't really know where it was gonna go. It went places that I didn't expect. It has some of the best, like, missed encounters that I've ever read in a book, where two characters are trying to find each other and keep missing each other, which is so frustrating but so great. I just was so intrigued by this book. I've read so much sort of predictable dystopian and like fantasy type books recently that this was just a breath of fresh air. There was just so much uniqueness and so much intrigue in this book. I loved it and I cannot wait for the last one. The last two on my list are audiobooks. First was Forgive Me Leonard Peacock by Matthew Quick. I loved this book. I didn't even really know what it was about when I bought it. I just knew that it was supposed to be really good. And it's a book about a kid who has a plan to take a gun to school, shoot one of his classmates, and then take his own life. And that might not sound like the most uplifting story, but because it's written in a diary format, I don't know. It's one of those things where I never knew that I wanted to understand the mindset of someone who might do something like this. And it was interesting listening to it as an audiobook because you really felt like he was talking to you, and it was just so good. It was so good, and it was sometimes hard to listen to, but so worth it. Definitely shed a couple tears, but I think it's a really interesting look at how society can fail some people, and it really makes you feel things. So I really recommend that one. Then the last audiobook on my list, the 5th book that tops my list for favorite books I've read so far this year, is I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. This was one of those books that everybody had been raving about, and I sort of missed it. It didn't seem interesting to me when it was first popular, and then I sort of took a second look at it, and also it was an Audible daily deal one day, so I only spent like $3 on it. But I loved this book. It's a book about a brother and sister and how they sort of have a falling out, and then this story takes you through the whole journey of their relationship, and it's really interesting because there's chapters in the point of view of the brother and the sister, but the ones from the brother's point of view are 2 years earlier in time than the ones from the sister's point of view, which I found to be a really, really interesting storytelling dynamic. And it's just such a beautifully interwoven story. Everything has some sort of impact on something else, and everything's connected in this way that it just comes together so nicely. And I really loved listening to this book. So those are my top 5. I would say if I were to do a runner-up, the book that just barely didn't make it on this list was Bossy Pants by Tina Fey. I also listened to this book and it was wonderful. I'm not really that big on memoirs. I've tried to listen to a couple, I don't always love them, but Bossy Pants was amazing. So I can't wait for the second half of this year and seeing what I'll read and what stands out and what's gonna be amazing. I would love to know down in the comments below which books of this year have been your favorite, not necessarily books that came out this year, but books that you've read this year. What have been your favorite, what you're looking forward to reading, and if you've read any of the books that I talked about in my video today. That's it. Just wanted to give you guys a little update on that. I hope you're having a great summer. Hope you're reading lots of books, and I will see you next time. Bye guys!